What's going on, y'all? I'm remaking my Fighter of the Decade video. I did this 3 months ago, but all of a sudden I'm starting to get people hitting me up in the comments section from a video I did 3 months ago over this topic. It's split between Canelo, Pacquiao, and my personal, as you see in the picture in the background, Mayweather. Really, it's Pacquiao and Canelo being discussed because the argument that I'm getting from a lot of people is Mayweather did not fight throughout the entire decade. A lot of people are discounting the Conor McGregor fight, and they're saying because he didn't fight, he only did half a decade, he shouldn't even be eligible. Like, he didn't fight the whole decade, he's not eligible. Well, I can semi-agree with that, but where I have to disagree with that is the fact that Mayweather beat the two names that are at the top of Fighter of the Decade. Those two names are Canelo and Pacquiao. Mayweather beat them both. So you cannot be greater than somebody greater than you. Let me restate that. You cannot be greater than somebody greater than you. How can you beat someone who's already beat you? See what I'm saying? It defies logic. So everything that Pacquiao and Canelo accomplished from here on doesn't really matter because they both fought Mayweather within the last decade and he beat them both. So to state that, wow, Mayweather's retired, there's no way he could beat Keith Thurman, you don't know that because he beat Pacquiao with ease. He hasn't fought Keith Thurman, but as easily as he beat Pacquiao, there's an argument to be had that Mayweather could have always have beaten Keith Thurman. Just like Canelo moving up to light heavyweight fighting Kovalev. Now, I knew this was going to happen with all the Canelo bandwagon fans, and this is my problem with Canelo. He beat a man who's on his last leg. Was it a legitimate win over a dominant force in light heavyweight? No. At this point, Kovalev is the weakest champion of all the champions. That's the problem with boxing. There's so many belts. If you go back to the era of Ali, there was only two major belts. Two. That was it. Now you have four major belts. And if you go back to like 2005 and below, there was only three major belts. So there's now more major belts than there's ever been. And I'm going to touch on this in a minute. So you can pick and choose weak champions of each division to either move up in weight or in your own division to get a title, you just go for the weakest one because there could be four. So you got your pick. And stylistically, you can see which one matches up with you, or you could just go for the weakest one, like I said. So it's very hard to say somebody's great just because they beat a champion. Now, with that being said, although this is just the last 10 years and it's not their entire career, let's look at Pacquiao, who I believe should definitely have it over Canelo. Because like I said, Canelo to me, in this last decade, was gifted 2 decisions against Triple G. In the first fight, Triple G definitely won. In the second fight, it should have been a draw, but Canelo somehow won both. Now, I could go other fights with Canelo to where I feel he got gifted decisions, but we all know that if it goes to the scorecards, no matter if Canelo's up or down, he's going to win. He's going to win on the scorecards, period. So with those there, then him jumping up to 168 to fight the weakest champion of 168, then jumping up to 175 to fight the weakest champion of 175. Me personally, I don't give that a lot of credit. Canelo's best win to me was against Danny Jacobs. He did a lot better. I gave him a lot of props for how he was moving his head, bobbing and weaving, a different wrinkle in his game that we haven't seen before. I gave him a lot of credit for that because I honestly thought Danny Jacobs could beat him. Had Jacobs beating Triple G. So let's take Canelo off the table and let's just look at Manny Pacquiao and Mayweather. Let's look at their career, because when you're talking about something like this, you're going against greatness of both men. Now, I have my issues with Mayweather. We all know I have my issues with Mayweather. But Mayweather did fight Pacquiao, and he did beat Pacquiao. For all those saying, well, that came 6 years too late, then don't praise Pacquiao for beating Keith Thurman. How can you do that? Because if you say it's 6 years too late whenever Mayweather fought him, well, here it is 4 years later, which would make it 10 years, Pacquiao out of his prime, but he beat Keith Thurman. You can't use that argument. You can't say they fought too late. You can't praise Pacquiao from here on if he wins. If you say Mayweather beat him too late when Mayweather's the older man by 2 years. See, people forget that. But let's just touch into their greatness, right? Pacquiao has beaten 22 champions. Whew. That sounds like a big number, but let's go over Mayweather. And I had to actually pull this up in the background because my memory's good, but it's not photographical. So I already know Mayweather's beaten 24 champions. So he beats Pacquiao there. But it doesn't stop with 24 champions. See, with Mayweather, it gets much better because Mayweather never lost. So he had 26 defenses in his career, which is amazing. Not only did he have 26 defenses, but he was in 23 lineal fights, what Tyson Fury likes to scream out. And he won all of those, of course, because he's undefeated. He beat 12 current or former lineal champions at that division, which is unheard of. He beat 12 of them. And then he also beat 2 people that were inducted in the Hall of Fame. So he beat 2 Hall of Famers, 12 lineal current or ex-champions, and 24 total champions. Even though he's only won 5 divisions and Pacquiao's won 8, he's done more in his 5 divisions than Pacquiao did in all 8. Now, there comes the fact of undisputed. If you look in the records, it will say Mayweather was never undisputed, which is a lie. Mayweather actually became undisputed when he beat Pacquiao because he has 3 of the 4 major belts. It used to only be 3, but when the WBO got added, it now made 4. It used to be the WBC, IBF, and I want to say the WBA was the other major belt because you've had other ones besides the IBF. You had the IBO, the IBA. Things have always shifted in being recognized, but the WBC has always been there. Let's look at it real fast. I'll tell y'all, just to be 100%, I might have closed it out, actually. So, here we go. If you don't believe me about undisputed, if we go back to the time of Ali, okay? So, we're going to go all the way back. Let me scroll up to heavyweight because everybody likes to mention Ali. So, Muhammad Ali was undisputed with 2 belts, the WBC, the WBA. That's what it is. WBC, WBA, not WBO. Well, WBO is added in IBF now. That should be the 4 major belts. So you had Ali with only 2 belts. If you keep going down, in fact, I don't even have to scroll. Lennox Lewis only had 3 belts. He was undisputed. If you keep looking, you're not going to see. So here recently, you had to have all 4 belts to be considered undisputed, supposedly. But if you don't believe me, this is what I did. I want y'all to listen to this. And you can say, I don't know boxing. Tony's Reviews don't know boxing. Well, let's go to the man himself who I have for Fighter of the Decade. Let's hear what he has to say on Undisputed.
A lot of times people fail to realize this. They don't know what, when we talk about undisputed. Mm. To be undisputed champion, you have to have 3 or more belts. Right. Not all 4. Mm-hmm. 3 or 4 of the organizations. Mm-hmm.
Oh, shoot. Did that just come from the horse's mouth himself? So, here's the reason why. When you look it up, Mayweather is not considered undisputed in the record books, even though he should be, even though it needs to be put in there that he was undisputed. He had 2 of the major 4 belts at the time when he fought Pacquiao. When he beat Pacquiao, he won 3 out of the major 4, now making him undisputed, the WBO. Here's where the problem comes in. Mayweather refused to pay sanctioning fees to the WBO, so they stripped him of the WBO title, thus stating he never received the WBO title, even though he won the WBO title. You see what I'm saying? So if you look at that, in 2015, Mayweather actually became undisputed. Pacquiao has never been undisputed in any of his 8 divisions in his entire career. He has never earned that title. Mayweather won undisputed with beating Pacquiao. Now, let's touch back on something real fast before I close this out. The idea that Mayweather quit fighting in 2015, even though he beat 2 of the head names on the Fighter of the Decade, is no longer eligible because he only had fought half the decade is ridiculous. Let's flip this. Let's say by some miracle, you had this guy who starts his professional boxing career. He enters into boxing in 2010. He has 1 fight. He chose to fight Mayweather, or Mayweather chose to fight him, however you want to say it. And this guy with 1 fight knocks Mayweather out and beats him. Gets all his titles. Then this guy with only 1 fight gets into a car wreck and can never box again. You're telling me because a guy who just beat Mayweather and only has 1 fight on his record, beating Mayweather in his first fight, is not greater than Mayweather because now he's not fighting anymore for the rest of the decade? Get the fuck out of here. That's ridiculous. If you lose to somebody, you are not better than them. That is the definition of a winner and a loser. A loser is not better than the winner because they lost. So all you fanboys, y'all can hate it, love it, or dislike it. It doesn't matter because at the end of the day, if you beat somebody, you are better than them. That is what it means in the dictionary. Any dictionary, any language. Mayweather beat both people up for Fighter of the Decade. It does not matter that he retired in 2015 because he beat the top 2 people in the running. He deserves Fighter of the Decade because he became undisputed with a technicality keeping him from getting that title. In 2015, he deserves Fighter of the Decade. There is nobody else who has beaten 2 of the top tier people on that list for Fighter of the Decade outside of Mayweather. You could hate Mayweather. You could dislike his choices. You could not like him flashing money. But at the end of the day, he beat both of the top runners for Fighter of the Decade. End of story. There's no argument with this. Floyd Mayweather deserves Fighter of the Decade. If he does not get Fighter of the Decade, it only proves what he's been saying all along, that boxing, the journalists, and everybody else involved in the sport has been against him from day one. They don't want to see him do good. They haven't ever wanted to see him do good. And because he's done so well, they have not liked him. That's what I'm going to end on. That's how I see it. Again, to close out, finally, because I'm rambling again, Floyd Mayweather is the #1 of this last decade. Nobody did more than him. And because of that, it doesn't matter that he only fought half the decade. He deserves it. End of story. Goodbye.